Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at the expansion panel radio widget. This is similar to the expansion panel widget, however the expansion panel radio widget can be used in an expansion panel list where you only want one expansion panel to be expanded at any one time. You'll notice our homepage state contains a scaffold with an app bar, and inside the scaffold's body we're going to create a single child scroll view, like so. And the child of the single child scroll view is going to be our expansion panel list. However, for this demonstration, we're going to use the radio named constructor. This takes a list of expansion panel radio widgets as its children, and this sets up the logic for the expansion panel list to only allow for one expansion panel to be expanded at any one time. Using that radio named constructor, we can specify the children of the expansion panel list. Now these will be an expansion panel for each of the material primary colours. So what we do is specify colours.primaries.map, updating the value there to colour. And this is going to essentially return an expansion panel radio widget for each of the material primary colours. So what we do is return expansion panel radio, like so. And you'll notice by the squiggles there on our IDE, the parameter body is required, the parameter header builder is required, and the parameter value is required. The header builder allows you to build the header of the expansion panel with a context provided and a boolean value specifying whether or not the expansion panel is expanded. The body is the body of the expansion panel's main content, if you like. You then have a parameter specifying whether or not you can tap on the header to expand and collapse the expansion panel. By default, you can only tap on the icon to expand and collapse the expansion panel. And last but not least, the value parameter should be unique for each of the expansion panel radios, and this essentially is the value of the expansion panel radio. As I say, this should be unique in all of the expansion panel radios contained in the expansion panel list. This is because the expansion panel list handles the expanded and collapsed state internally. So, first of all, we'll specify the value, which will be our material primary colour, like so. We can then use the header builder, providing us with a context and whether or not the expansion panel is expanded. And inside here, we will return a list tile. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we will simply specify some placeholder text for each of the titles. Next up, we can specify the body of the expansion panel radio. For the purposes of this demonstration, this will simply be a container with a colour matching the expansion panel's material primary colour and a fixed height of 100, like so. You'll notice how, by saving that and hot reloading, we now have our list of expansion panels. You'll notice how I can tap on the icon to expand and collapse each of the expansion panels. However, it should be noted, as you can see here, that I can only expand one expansion panel at a time. This works differently to the expansion panel and not expansion panel radio, because the expansion panel allows you to have multiple expansion panels open at the same time. You'll notice that the expansion panel list comes with an expansion callback function, providing us with the index of the tapped expansion panel and whether or not the expansion panel is expanded or not. Now, this expansion callback is necessary to control the state of each of the expansion panels when you're using the default expansion panel list with expansion panel children. However, because the state of the expansion panel list.radio and each of the expansion panel radios is managed internally, this is simply a convenience callback which will be called whenever the user taps on one of the expansion panel icons. You do not need to fill this callback function in with logic to determine whether or not an expansion panel radio is expanded or not. This is different again to how the standard expansion panel works, whereby it's up to us to provide the state to control whether or not each expansion panel is expanded or not. Essentially, the other parameters allow you to specify the duration of the expanded and collapsed animations, the initial open panel value, i.e. which panel should be open initially, if at all, and also the padding of each of the expanded headers. You'll notice the expansion panel radio has this can tap on header parameter. By default, can tap on header is false, and setting this to true allows you to tap on the header and not just the icon. For example, specifying can tap on header as false, which is the default, means that you cannot tap on the header to expand and collapse the expansion panels. You'll notice I'm only able to tap on the icon on the right hand side. However, specifying can tap on header as true, you'll notice that I can tap anywhere in the expansion panel's header to expand and collapse the expansion panels. Removing that can tap on header parameter sets the value to its default of false, allowing you to only tap on the icon to expand and collapse the expansion panels. Essentially then, the expansion panel list.radio named constructor allows you to create a list of expansion panel radio children, and it allows the user to only have a single expansion panel expanded at any one time. This is different to the standard expansion panel list constructor with the expansion panel children, which allows you to have any number of expansion panels expanded. However, in doing so, it means that we then have to implement the logic which controls whether or not each of the expansion panels is expanded. For more information about that, you can check out the expansion panel episode. As I say, if you wish the user to only be able to open and close a single expansion panel at any one time, then use the expansion panel list.radio named constructor with a list of expansion panel radio children. If you want the user to be able to open multiple expansion panels at any one time, then use the default expansion panel list constructor with a list of expansion panel children. I hope you found this episode useful. Thank you very much for watching.